So excuse me. I find that I often don't struggle with sermons much anymore. At least I haven't for the last year or so, but this one is a little different. It was as if a wall has been built around my thought processes for some time. You know, we're in the 15th day of this government shutdown because of a wall. In my opinion, while the executive office wants to wall people out, what we're doing in this country is we're walling ourselves apart from one another. Those who want to build a wall against those who don't want other walls, thinking that of course, I always think of the words that are on the Statue of Liberty, you know, bring me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. So walls and arguments have sort of been on my mind lately. What I'm hoping is that we do not wall out the Holy Spirit as we steer ourselves through these rough waters ahead. So I feel a little bit like this line from Rainier Rilke's book. I'm reading a book that's titled The Notebook of Multi-Lauridge Bridge. And he writes, certain differences mark me off from other people more than anything ever did in the past. At the moment, I'm finding it a little difficult. I'm a beginner in the circumstances of my own life. A beginner in the circumstances of my own life. So, don't misunderstand me, first of all. Standing in this pulpit might be a little uncomfortable right now. I do not avoid conflict, and I do not avoid difficult challenges. But we all have a breaking point. I reached mine on the 13th of December. That's why I needed to take some time off for my own mental health, my own physical health. I'm only human, no matter what people think about pastors, we are only human. Some may think my absence was a cop-out, that it was convenient for me to disappear. You can have your opinions. I can't stop you from that. I only ask that you, at some point in time, schedule time with me to have a conversation. Because it's only in talking and in listening that we'll be able to move through this moment in time. But I also ask that you don't wall me off. So let me play Captain Obvious for a moment and state some obvious points. Emily has resigned. We're in a new and a different and difficult era in the congregation, though it seems to me that here at Trinity we seem to go through these kinds of changes about every 20 years or so. If you look back in our history, that's not uncommon for churches. You know that. There are many who spent a lot of time trying to avoid the resolution that finally came to be. It just seemed the momentum of that train was unstoppable. Let me state the next obvious point. Some people are really angry. Some are really confused. Others are really disappointed. And there are others who are just oblivious to what has happened. And others are somewhere in between. No one's happy about the outcome. No one. Not me, not you. No one. The next obvious point is this. Remaining in your anger will do no one any good. Listen to me. I'm not telling you that you cannot be angry. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that keeping your anger will do more harm than good if it continues for too long. How we move through the anger, how you move through the anger will be individualized to each person sitting here. But to stay stuck in that anger will not change what has happened. Staying stuck, walling yourself behind the hurt will hurt more over the long run. Coming out from behind the wall and working towards moving forward is what will help us resolve those feelings. The next obvious point, maybe it's not so obvious, but again needs to be stated. I want you to consider three things. What have we learned about ourselves? What have we learned about our faith? What have we learned about our congregation? Now, this is a little more complicated. Some of you believe you've learned already what you need to learn. You've determined who the terrible people are. You've rallied around the hurt people. I can see that. I won't refute that. Some of you have very deep feelings and emotions about the situation, and those feelings will not go away in just a couple of weeks. I cannot stop you from feeling the way that you feel. But I also want you to remember that nothing is as black and white as it appears. Nothing is ever as clear-cut as it seems to be. And again, that's why I hope you will take some time to schedule time to talk with me over the next few weeks and months. But getting back to that first question, as you've reflected upon what's happened, what have you learned about yourself? Every experience we have is an opportunity to learn something about ourselves. One of the things we learn is how we move through these really difficult experiences of sudden and abrupt change. Nothing in our lives remains the same. Everything changes, sometimes on a daily basis. It's when we try to live in a world where nothing changes that we get ourselves into trouble. At least that's where the church gets itself into trouble. When we become too stuck, and when we sit behind those walls of anger and disagreement, then we lose the ability to adapt to change in healthy ways. Of course, when we lose somebody in leadership in the congregation, even when we lose somebody in leadership at our workplaces, it's always better that it comes with a warning rather than sudden death. Yes, a loss is a loss. Both are permanent. I'm not trying to be morbid here, but I'm just trying to point out the obvious. Any loss involves the death of something. And the resulting feeling that you've been kicked in the gut. And so we find ourselves trying to deal with that loss, and we often find ourselves moving through those 5 stages of grief that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler came up with, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. They're part of this framework that makes up how we learn to live with loss and grief. They help us frame or identify the way that we're feeling. But they aren't strict, linear stations in some timeline of our grief. In other words, how we move through those stages and phases will be individualized for each person. As Christians, we hopefully remember that our faith in Jesus helps us to deal with loss. Just like our faith helps us to deal with life. So now's not the time that we leave our faith. Now's the time that we lean on our faith. And what have we learned about our congregation? I will say that's probably yet to be determined. Right now, I can feel pretty safe to say that people feel awful. Therefore, there's a lot of work to do for all of us. Not just me, not just you, not just our leadership. We all have work to do. That's why I've asked members of the Synod's Congregational Leadership Resource Team to come in and help us work through these feelings. Our first meeting is with these pastors is this coming Tuesday with the council, the previous council, the current council. They're coming to listen. They're coming to help us reflect, to help us put together in motion ways that we can avoid these things from happening in the future. Today we celebrate the season of Epiphany. The Epiphany of our Lord, the recognition of the Lordship of Jesus Christ, the visitation of the Magi, the announcement to Herod and to the world that a new king had come to town. I bring this up now not only because it's my responsibility to preach on the gospel, but because it reminds us that God was present in the world at the beginning of creation. God was present in the world at the birth of Jesus Christ. God is present in the world right now. God will always be present in the world. And sometimes God is present in the world and in our lives and in the life of this congregation in very surprising and unexpected ways. It was true with Herod and God and the Magi. Herod was ordering subterfuge. The wise men ended up having to sneak around and to get out of town in the middle of the night. You see, it was into a world of sin and trouble and fear and doubts that Jesus was born. That Jesus was marked as a king in our midst. And the family received those gifts of frankincense and gold and myrrh. What challenged those of the first century is what challenges us today. The challenge to see how God is present in the midst of chaos and anger and fear and doubt. Now you might say to yourself, how is God present in this mess? Is God present with us now? Of course, I have to that question, I have to give a resounding yes. I have to. How is God present? Well, I'm still figuring that out. I have no idea, especially how to point out to you the God moments I have experienced since this crisis began. But as a Christian congregation, we either believe that God is forging a path forward despite our human weaknesses, or we do not believe that God either works that way or is powerful enough to do that. But I believe that God is powerful. I believe that prayer is powerful and effective, and that we believe in a powerful, powerful God who calls us to love our enemies, who calls us to pray for those who persecute us, calls us to love the unlovable and to forgive one another unconditionally and unceasingly. And that's hard right now to discuss, to believe, to accept. But this Christian stuff is often pretty hard. We still have many, many gifts among the people in our midst. Those gifts will support us as we welcome the presence of the Holy Spirit every day in our lives. No, those gifts will not keep us away from trouble and chaos, but they will help us deal with the trouble and the chaos. Even the first family, Mary and Joseph and Jesus, who received such valuable gifts at the birth of Jesus, still had to face their own trials and chaos and fears and doubts. Those gifts did not wall out the troubles. Those gifts supported them through their trials. So let me leave you with the words from Psalm 72 again that we heard. The psalmist writes, "Our God delivers the needy when they call, the poor and those who have no helper. God has pity on the weak and the needy and saves their lives. God frees them from tyranny and torture. When they bleed, God bleeds. When they die, God sees their blood as precious." Right now, our hearts, our souls, our very beings are bleeding. But God has not forgotten us. God has not forsaken us. We must have faith that God is doing something mysterious, something powerful, something new in our midst. Now is not the time to doubt our faith. Now is not the time to wall each other away from ourselves. Now is the time to lean on Jesus, to lean on each other, to lean on our gifts of ministry, and to lean on the gift of the Holy Spirit. Amen? Amen. Amen. Oh, we're going to sing. Let's see here. We're going to sing hymn number 314. Arise, your light has come.